Sup, YouTube? So I was thinking about this the other day, and I see a lot of the blogs and TikToks talking about how screwed up the economy is and how no one can get a job, blah, blah, blah. We already know about this, right? But one of the things I wanted to put or bear some insight on is no one ever talks about, or very few people talk about, the impact of your social life when you don't have a job. Now, when you don't have a job, it doesn't mean that you necessarily don't have money, because you could always be doing Ubers, you could be on unemployment, you could be, just doing side jobs. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have no money. Just like being broke doesn't mean that you basically have no money. No, being broke is basically like, hey, I may have $20 in my pocket, but I owe like $500. That's broke. You know what I'm saying? So you may have access to some kind of capital, but that doesn't mean that you are like just completely just out of it. It just means that you're probably 1 or 2 steps away from that. But the reason why I want to bring up this is because, I hear so many people talking about how, fewer people are going out to eat, and there are less people shopping for material goods and stuff like that. And it makes sense. People are going to tend to not go to the movies or not go to a 5-star restaurant when they have the option to do a Netflix and chill. And me personally, I can tell you that it's been a while since I've actually got together with a group of my buddies and actually went out and grabbed a beer or played poker or watched a fight. And these were things that we did, at least once or twice a month, I would say. So it makes me think like, man, is everybody going through this? I definitely did see a couple posts on Instagram of dudes basically like, man, this is it. Like, all we do is work 80 hours to 40 hours a week, and you really have nothing to show for it, not even savings or retirement now because of inflation. So it's like, what do? You've worked 3 years for a company. Everybody that you pretty much hang out with or associate yourself with works with said company. So once you kind of disconnect that umbilical cord, you got to start all over again. And your social life is impacted greatly because you're not going out, you're not socializing, you're not networking. So this then also puts you into a vicious spiral of, man, you're really going to have a hard time getting your next gig, because we live in a world now where you got to know somebody. Let's just face it. You got to know somebody. You got to be a daughter, or you got to be a boyfriend. You got to be somebody to these people for them to hire you. Because when I tell you, I've walked into, a lot of places that I almost would feel ashamed to go into in terms of, my degree and my professional experience. I've gone into places where I literally had to humble myself and take a deep breath and say, hey, it's just a job. Like, the most depressing thing I want to say of these last couple years was doing my taxes. Last year I did my taxes and I made probably less than half, or a little bit more than half of what I made the previous year. That was already depressing. This year, I did my taxes. Man, this year, I made a little bit less than half of what I made last year. So when I tell you that I haven't gotten any stupider, I've only gained more skills, and I've been making it like pretty much like mandatory for myself to build my skills. So when I tell you nothing has degraded in terms of my quality of work and my intelligence, But somehow, some way, I've managed to lose almost half of my income, more than half, double half of my income in the past 2 years. And I have not stopped working. Even though I haven't, been in my industry, I've been working. Whether I had to get a job, here and there at FedEx, or have to do some contract work here and there, or even just doing Uber Eats. I have never stopped working. Even now, while I'm doing this video, I'm working. I am on the clock. You heard my Uber go off a couple times. So it makes it, and honestly, in many cases, I'm actually working harder than when I was making good money. I'm working harder. I'm putting in twice as much effort for twice as less. So it's a really daunting thing to see it on paper. It's one thing to feel it and just kind of think, okay, well, I'm making a little bit less here. I'm making 5,000 less here, or I'm taking a cut per hour here. When you get to see it on paper, it's something that, man, it can hit you like a sack of bricks, man, to know that man, I'm actually like being devalued more as I get older. You got all these young kids who don't know anything coming into the industry where I'm coming at, and they're devaluing those guys too. And they're not teaching those guys crap either. So it makes me think, who's actually winning out here? I know there are people winning, but who is? And also, what do you do at this point? Do you just start going to the beach? Even going to the beach, you need gas, you need to park, and I'm not close to one. But what are some things you do socially to keep yourself, in the mix and sharp and networking when you don't have any money to go to the bar, you don't have any money to go to the movies, you don't have any money to go to the mall? You really only have money for bare necessities, like eating and shelter. That alone is hectic right now, with rent being so high and food prices being so high. So your social life is practically out the window. And now I can tell you for a fact that 90% of my day is focused on how do I make some money, and how do I get a job, or how do I get my next gig. That's 90% of my day. The other 10% is sleep. And I think a lot of Americans can identify with that at this moment. So please give me a comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know, how has this changed your social life? We all know that it sucks, and we know it's hard, and it's gonna get harder, and more layoffs are coming. Let's start talking about other things, about other things, like what else is being impacted and what can we actually do about it. But in the meantime, this is TNN. It's your boy Rems. I just kind of wanted to put that topic out there. You guys comment, like, subscribe. Look forward to more posts. Be easy.